Very good.
Yeah, she wants quiet.
Very good.
You'll be able to see it, Ting where it will go. One of the things I get a kick out of is you can see Ting and Feng Yuan with umbrellas, but no, it's not raining. They just don't want to have sun on them because in China they consider white to be more beautiful and they do not like brown, so they will use creams and they try to stay out of the sun. They do whatever they can to make themselves white. Let's talk about education, because I mentioned that in my very first video and mentioned that I think education has become big business, and in essence what that means is I think it's a crime, actually. I think when banks were allowed to charge people ridiculous amounts for student loans, and I'm not a fan of bankruptcy because I think you should have to take responsibility for whatever your obligations were, but when they made those types of debts, in almost all cases you cannot discharge those in a bankruptcy, so that debt is with you the rest of your life. So let's say that you accumulate $100,000 in student loans, which in this day and age probably is not difficult to do. If I just work out at 6%, my rough rule of thumb is $1,000 a month for every $100,000. So $1,000 a month for 20 years, however long it takes to pay. I mean, it will be there forever if you don't pay it off because you can't discharge it. But you could argue that if you're going to be a lawyer or a doctor or whatever other profession that has significant earning potential, well, $1,000 a month in student loans is not a high price to pay if you're going to be earning $500,000, right? So in those, there's a pro and there's a con. But what I've seen happen a lot of times is people aren't sure what they want to do with their lives. So what do? Well, used to be everybody would go to college, high school. Now today people say, well, if you want to be successful, you have to go to college. Well, in the end, a college degree is just a piece of paper. It's an important piece of paper, but that's all it is. If you go there and don't take anything from the experience other than partying and growing up, was it worth $100,000 in debt? I don't think so. So what are the alternatives if you choose not to go to college? Well, it doesn't mean the end of your life. Over in China, they have what's called the Gaokao, which means high test or exam, and it is what they use to determine whether you get into college, number one, and secondly, if you do get into school, what school can you go to? And surprisingly, the better you score, the less you pay for your college. And the better school you go into. So let's say you're at the top of the score on the Gaokao. Two of their more famous schools in Beijing are called Peking University and Tsingtao. And they are quite large. Thousands of students go there. And I don't know the details of each school. I've been to each school. I don't remember which one is based on liberal arts and which one's based on sciences or what their specialties are. But the students who go there are considered the best of the best. And it also is my understanding that they also pay the least amount. So I think I was told that they'd pay, say, $500 a year for school. Whereas I have other friends who didn't do as well on the Gaokao, and they went to secondary or tertiary schools, not as good as those, and they're paying $2,000 to $3,000. I believe it's a year. And so you'll see it's paying more. They're still going to school. The quality of the education, the campuses, the teachers, I mean the facilities, it's a fraction of what you have at these other institutions. And that is why they put so much pressure on the Gaokao. But the mistake that a lot of them make is from the time they're 5 years old all the way up till they're 17, 18 years old, all the pressure is on scoring for that test. So that's what everything is geared towards, that test. And they're 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. That's just the beginning. But a lot of them think that that's the end. They've been working to that point, they get there, and then what next? I actually started my first business when I was 9 or 10 years old, and worked that till I was about 17 or 18 when I went away to school, and I had enough to pay for 1 year of college from that. Not a lot of money, but every little bit counts. But after that, every other education class I went to, every other degree I got, I basically had the people I was working for pay for it. So when I got my master's, when I went back for an engineering degree, I had companies pay for that. And so in essence it was just my time. And anytime a company was willing to pay for it, I looked at it as free money. And so you should definitely take advantage of those benefits when they're offered. Education, it's a wonderful thing. And what exactly is education to you? Well, what is it you enjoy? What is it you're good at? And do you typically learn more from a book, or do you typically learn more from going out into the real world and living? Me personally, I'm a much better hands-on person, and I'm a visually oriented person. I can understand things in a book and read things, but it will come through 100 times better during the lecture in a class, or going into a lab or into the real world and actually getting my hands on something and working it. And then it hits home. And so I would definitely recommend to anybody who is a younger person or anybody who's older to keep learning. Whatever that means. Whatever it is you want to learn. I just tell myself someday I'm going to be dead, and not today. And so today is here. It's the only thing I have, the only thing I'm guaranteed. What will I do today to make a better experience? Do I learn every day? Absolutely not. But what can I do to expand my horizon? And I know it sounds like garbage, but it isn't. And that is where all of us have to make these personal decisions. Watching Dancing with Stars isn't going to do anything for you. If you're even watching it, you're probably daydreaming about something else as you watch it. I don't even have a TV. Well, I have a TV, but it's in the storage. No need for it. So, make a list. Put down all the things you want to do. If you want to travel, find a way to travel. If you want to take a cooking class, if you want to be a nurse, if you want to join the military, if you want to, whatever it is you want to do, do it. Do it. And if you find out when you start, let's say you want to be Albert Einstein, right? Start taking physics, start taking mathematics. If you start doing it and you realize this isn't for me, well, that's fine. But there's a difference between just giving up and pushing through and making it work. I mean, anything in life worth achieving is going to take hard work, perseverance, dedication, sweat, as they call sweat equity, blood, guts, whatever you want to call it, intestinal fortitude. So just because it's difficult doesn't mean it should be avoided. And take a lesson from me. The mistake I made in high school was I had a choice for science, and I chose chemistry instead of physics. And I love chemistry. I think it's great. But I took biology. I did not enjoy biology at all, except for the part of biology that involves math in DNA and chromosomes, all that fun stuff. But when it came to physics or chemistry, chemistry I knew was a lot of math. Physics I didn't know anything about. And instead of looking into it further, I chose chemistry. Not a bad decision, but looking back, I wish I had had a little bit more courage and taken the physics. Because physics is, in essence, everything I do today for one of my jobs. It's all physics related. And when I went back for school for engineering, that had a significant amount of physics. And physics is the real world, real life. I strongly encourage anybody to take physics class. It is awesome. It's probably one of the most important things you can understand because it's based in the real world. And it helps you to understand why things are happening or why they're not happening. So strongly recommend that for everyone. Languages, 100%. I think it's a shame in this country that we don't learn enough languages. The rest of the world does speak English to a great extent, but I like to take power into my own hands. And if I'm going to be doing business with somebody, or if I have to communicate with somebody, or heaven forbid my life depends on something, and English isn't cutting it, I hope that I know that language. So if I'm going over to certain areas on a regular basis, I have a responsibility and an obligation to get up to speed on that language as best I can. And that's easier said than done. I envy the people who learn a language from the time they're, this tall, because it's still difficult, still challenging, but as a child, I think you have the time and maybe greater ability to act like a sponge and suck that stuff in. People use the word passion. I think passion plays into it, but it comes down to what you want to do. I think it's an overused word, but I think it's just you have to, first of all, I think young people have to get a feel on who they are as a person. You have to get comfortable with yourself. You have to know yourself. You have to really learn to meditate and have inner peace and learn what you want and what you don't want. And follow that instinct. It's an instinct that you learn to acquire. Trust in yourself most of all.